All right, how's everybody doing tonight? I am just getting off of John's stream over at John's Longbox, so you'll just have to give me 1 minute in order to make sure I got everything in order here. If anybody in the chat can hear me, you can give me a shout out. That would be great. Thank you very much. I do see Michael is here. Sound Engraver is here, says you can only stay for a few minutes, and Bethel is here as well. So, we have another 13 people there as well. Anybody, just give me a quick shout out in the chat, just to let me know that you can hear me. Great Samuel is here and he can hear me. Great Sequential Treasures is here also. So tonight I'm going to talk about bad art. And what I usually do, since I haven't done one of these streams in a couple of weeks, if anybody is new, I just go off about something for probably about 20 minutes. And then I will talk to everybody and answer your questions and see what I can do about answering any questions that you have about my topic, about my crowdfunded comics, about anything I talk about on my channel, anything you want to discuss at all. But I'm trying to pull up some stuff in the background, so just give me 1 minute here. As I said, we're going to talk about bad art. And the reason why I wanted to talk about bad art is because I ran across something that was about 80s architecture and design. And I'm very much someone who um, wants to go back to great 80s comics. But here's the thing. There are some great 80s comics and there are some really bad 80s comics. And you are looking at, if you see the thumbnail for, or have seen the thumbnail for this live stream, you'll see what was it? Rob Liefeld's Captain America, and that is bad 90s art. But that is a culmination of bad 80s art because he thought that he could get away with that. Now, where does that come from? That's the question we have to ask. And I'm going to see if I can share this screen. Just 1 second here. I have, let's see, a second tab open. So if you just give me 1 minute, and we're going to go to Wikipedia, unfortunately, but it does give you some uh, some good stuff to look at here. We're going to look at the Memphis group. Now, if you don't know what the Memphis group is, let's see if I can make this a little bigger here. Da, 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 full screen, full screen. Oh, full screen. There we go. So the Memphis group. This is where 80s art actually comes from, or the 80s art that developed into 90s art. Let's take a look at some of these pictures here. So the Memphis group was a group of architects and designers that decided to go with a completely different direction starting around 1983, although they started prior to that each individually in the 70s, late 70s. So this is the 80s design. This is the quintessential 80s design. And most people, when they talk about 80s design and art, they go back to the Memphis group and say this started in 1983. They laid the groundwork for everything that was going to come for the rest of the 80s and then into the 90s. Now you can see some of this stuff is, excuse me, some of this stuff is just horrific, but it's very, very 80s. And here's the thing about the Memphis group. The Memphis group actively was trying to do the exact same thing I'm always railing against. What are they trying to do? They're trying to promote postmodernism. And postmodernism, as I always say, is just a, a French version of critical theory. Critical theory, of course, being a Marxist ideology where they try to criticize something continuously until they just destroy it, which really is what they're trying to, excuse me, is what they're trying to do with art here. So what the Memphis group did and what they stated that they were going to do was, although they never really stated themselves being postmodernists, but they had a postmodern mentality towards what they were doing. They wanted to get rid of modernism. They wanted to get rid of the clean, straight lines of modernism and put in this kind of stuff. And you get these bright colors, you get these very odd choices for what they're making stuff out of, and they wanted to go back to the campiness of the 1950s, and also um, the instead of using wood or stone, they use plastic or they use laminate of different kinds in order to create a chair, things like that. And again, this is the kind of thing that influenced art for the rest of the 1980s and then just continued on into the 1990s. And again, what the Memphis group said that they were trying to do was to take the pop art from the 1950s and the kitsch of the 1950s and bring it back into style in the 1980s. And again, doing it to destroy the straight lines and the classical look that had dominated up until that point, which is to say modernism. So they were postmodernists, even though they never really what declared themselves to be postmodernists according to the philosophy itself. But that's definitely what they were. So that's the thing. When I go back to and think about going back to really great 1980s comics, I think about Mike Zeck. I think about George Perez. I think about John Byrne. I think about all of these classical looking creators that are definitely part of a modernist movement. I don't go back to postmodernism. Um, there are what is his name off the top of my head? I'm sure someone will put this in the comments. But what was the name of the fellow who did the second run of the New Mutants? Now, the first run of the New Mutants, the original first run, which was done in part by Mike Gustovich, who I work with right now and is doing some of Crom the Destroyer for me right now because I like his art. Um, but you had, oh, what's his name? Bill Sienkiewicz, I think it was Bill Sienkiewicz, um, that did the second run of New Mutants. Bill Sienkiewicz is your, well, definitely in his experimental style where he wanted to go with it. It was a postmodern feel to it. Why? Because you had these weird angles, because you had things that didn't make any sense. You had these bright colors where things would just, again, uh, blend one into another. And it destroyed the ideas of straight lines and the idea that your eye can definitely see the boundaries of each and every character, each and everything, because that's modernism. And when you had Bill Sienkiewicz and people like him doing that kind of thing, it bled into what you now know as the image creators, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, not so much. I would say Jim Lee was very much more of a old style modernist way of drawing, although there were influences of the new style within his art as well. But definitely Rob Liefeld and a few of the others, because they tried to take not just the straight lines and the definitive forms of the characters, but they tried to enter into there are things that did not belong per se, that were extraneous, because again, modernism's all about we'll take everything classical and we'll just boil it down to its most essential qualities so that we can um, we can use it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. That's what modernism is. It's basically classical art on a assembly line because you got to get it out there as quickly and as efficiently as possible. And as a rebellion to that, the postmodern art and the postmodern philosophy, which again comes from Marxism, if you trace it back through critical theory, and critical theorists were declared Marxist, you'll see that the destruction of truth and beauty is part and parcel of what they were trying to do. And that's what you get with Rob Liefeld and his giant amount of patches all over everybody, or pouches, sorry, not patches, pouches. You know, you got these pouches and um giant, what would they call it? Let me take this ugly art one more time. We'll go through it one more time while I'm talking, and then I'll take it off the background. But you get these giant arm pads and pads that really would get in the way of, let's say, in a fight or something like that. You have these ridiculous ideas. And yes, I understand that comics to some extent are ridiculous in themselves, but at the same time, it has a postmodern feel to it. And that's why I don't particularly like the image creators, not like I not idolize, but just marvel at the art of Mike Zeck. It is clean. It is something that is going to draw the eye to a very definitive story, and it's an expression of a thought, not an expression of a feeling. I think that's the best way to describe it. I think that a lot of people, let's put up some good classical art here in the background. Let's see. I think I have some Neil Adams here. Neil Adams is definitely a modern. Nope, that's not Neil Adams. Let me see. One second. We have some Tarzan. How's about some? Here's some classical art for you. All right, classical style of art. We'll put it up for another 5 minutes or so, and talk about the fact that when you look at a lot of the image creators in their different forms, um, Willis Portico, if that's how you pronounce his name, I can never pronounce his name correctly. Again, you had these flowing hair that went into nowhere and spikes that came out of everywhere, and you have different creators drawing, let's see, like capes that would get you killed if you were a superhero just because they're so long and flowy and things like that. Again, these are all traits of a postmodernist idea. And this is why I go back to the 1980s. I would say early 1980s instead of the 1990s. You have a lot of people who are doing crowdfunded comics. And by the way, the links for my crowdfunded comics are in the description. You are looking at one of the posters available for the open campaign right now in the background earlier. That was my character Cardinal. But again, you'll see the clean lines and the idea that everything needs to be distinct within the comics that I produce. And that's an early 1980s aesthetic. And the guys that are doing indie comics right now who want to go back to the 1990s, I think to myself, why in the name of sweet merciful heavens would you ever want to go back to the 1990s and deal with art like that? Why? Because it's a product of 10 to 15 years of postmodern deconstruction of art itself because of people like the Memphis group and their influence on the 1980s. And how I would say, what is the best visual representation of the Memphis group? It would be Miami Vice. There it is, right there. Miami Vice. You have these pastel colors and things don't make any sense, that kind of thing. If anybody remembers Miami Vice, by the way, the original, that is to say. But that's my I'm going to go short today with my description of this entire thing, but I like classical art. I like what you're looking at in the background, even though some of these characters and some of these creators I'm not going to follow anymore. It doesn't matter. Their art is classic. Their art has clean lines. Their art is definitive in so much as you can understand what is going on just at a glance. And that is something that the Memphis group tried to destroy with its introduction of nonsensical shapes and things like that. And that's what postmodernism tries to do. And so, again, that is the future of the conflict between what is going to happen within sequential art, in my estimation, within the next 10 years. There is going to be another conflict because that conflict took place already in 1983. Because again, even the Memphis school said, we're going back to pop art. And what is comics? Comics is pop art. So obviously, it was an easy sell to try and bring this type of art into comics itself. But what took over at that time when it was modernism versus postmodernism, it was the postmodern idea that came out on top. And we're going to go through another conflict of those two within an artistic sense within, I would say, the next 10 years. And the struggle is to bring back the clean lines of modernism. And that's what I champion, and especially so much so because I think that heroes and the idea of hero that I'm always talking about, which is a paragon of virtue, it's a classical idea, and it runs through the ancients into the medievals and even into certain sections, now the minority of a section, but certain section of modern culture. And you need clean lines to deal with that. Because again, it's a lot about thought, not about expressing feelings, which is what you're going to get within a lot of, let's say, modern Marvel and DC, current Marvel and DC. All right, so that's my rant about postmodernism and about the Memphis group and about bad art from the 1980s and the 1990s. Um, I'll, I don't want to show too much of that bad art. I want to look at this classical art. Look at this beautiful piece of art in the background. So I'm going to give some shout out to who is here, and then we'll get into any questions in the chat. Thank you very much. We got 47 people in the chat already. Holy Moses. Thank you very much, everybody, for showing up. Let's see. Samuel, as I said, was here. So is Bethel. So is Sequential Treasures. Vaz is here. Tony is here. I'm glad everybody is coming back, even though I haven't done one of these streams in a couple of weeks. Vaz says, let's see. Vaz says, wasn't that Captain America image something not supposed to be printed? I don't know if actually, as far as I know, it was part of the rebooting of the Marvel universe, and I don't know that for sure, Vaz, but it was printed, and it was mocked soundly from the very day that it came out. I can tell you that from looking at it on the shelves when it came out. So yeah, whether or not it was supposed to be printed, I don't know, but it was, and it became a part of comic history. Let's see who else is here. Comics Raider is here. Let's see. Comics says, this is a great night. Plenty of excellent streams happening. Good to hear. I just came off of the stream, if you don't know, from John's Longbox. We were talking to Irene from the creator of Fiendish. Great conversation if you want to go back and listen to that later. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael is here. Michael says, bad art is one of the reasons I got into anime in the first place. Well, here's the thing about anime. Quite honestly, it's a strange combination of bad art and good art. I'll put it that way, because you get hyperrealism sometimes within anime and manga, but at the same time, you also get the cartoonish version of the Japanese cartoonish version. Sometimes I've seen it called the deformed form in books that try to describe anime and manga in a Western way and a style. Basically, the eyes are so big and the head is so big that this would never actually fit on a human being. So it's cartoonish. And that's the thing. But cartoonish, I would say, many a times, certainly a lot of the times that I've watched anime and read manga, that has clean lines. And it has to have clean lines probably because of the black and white art. So even though you get into the cartoony side, that's not postmodernism. Cartoony is more of a what would you call it? It's more of an exaggeration of features than trying to destroy what has come before, to destroy the real, which you can see in a lot of anime, by the way, Michael. And when sometimes you see an anime that is very cartoony, and then all of a sudden you get someone being very serious and they draw a very serious picture. I always love when they do that, because that's not saying that one of these art styles is going to triumph over the other because they have to battle it out. It's saying we can use both at the same time, which is great. All right, I'll scroll down a little bit more and see what we got here for more questions. Samuel says, that's, don't go telling that specific cap art is bad to Richard Myers. He'll get you in your sleep. I don't know what Richard has to say about that piece of art, but okay. Let's see. Scrolling down. Zach Dan is here. We also have Rex. Rex is here. Rex says, you're cutting out a bit, RJ. I'm cutting out a bit. Okay. Give me a second here. I apologize. Let's see. Maybe if I reduce some of the stuff here that I have in the background. Thank you very much for letting me know that. I'll see if I can, let's see. Give me 2 seconds here to try and minimize some of the stuff I got going. And there we go. Hopefully my sound will be better after that. Let's see. Sequential Treasure says postmodernism is just the deconstruction of beauty. Exactly. The, definitely, definitely, exactly. Um, that's it's the destruction of what is the true, the good, and the beautiful. That's what it is. Sound Engraver says sounds good to me. So some people might be having issues with my sound, others might not. Let's see. Let's see. Michael says that's way 80s clothes. That's why 80s clothes look so weird. Yeah. Because of the pastels and all that kind of stuff. I can remember wearing 80s clothes. Yes, they did look weird. Scrolling down. That John John says looks like a child's playroom. Um, that's actually what they're going for. Quite honestly, that's what they were going for. They wanted to be childish. Why? Because clear and distinct forms with clean lines is a product of the rational. The rational is a product of the adult mind, and they wanted to go with feeling. And feeling is the product of the immature mind. So yeah, they wanted to have things look like they were childish. Quite honestly. So you hit the nail on the head there, John. Let's see. Oh, John's Longbox is here as well. How you doing, John? I thought he had a stream going on with Mandy right now, but I think he's just showing up waiting for Mandy, possibly. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael has a great comment here. At least they got rid of shag carpeting. uh, I'm sorry, but as a product of someone who remembers the entire 80s, I kind of miss carpet everywhere. uh, I don't know. I'm one of those people who loves carpet everywhere. Maybe it's because my feet are always cold. I don't know. Let's see here. Scrolling down. Sound Engraver. Oh, by the way, I want to give a shout out to Sound Engraver. I always do. Go on over to Sound Engraver's channel if you want to see some of the things that I do, but in a more musical slant. That's what Sound Engraver does. So go on over to her channel and check it out. Let's see. Sound Engraver says, let's face it, postmodernism is our Christmas lights now. Ugly, ugly colors with no real illumination. I know Christmas looked better 30 years ago. Sound Engraver, I could not agree more. I was looking at, quite honestly, um, I have, what is it? Some of my friends and we look at the projection systems that go onto the side of houses now, which make no sense. They're just random lights, and we call it light barf. That's what we call it because that's what it looks like. It's light barf. It's not Christmas lights. And I even seen one that I was just coming home there yesterday or today, and they had the Grinch in the middle of the light. It was basically a stencil of the Grinch, but it was part of the light that was just shining on the entire house. I'm going, why? Why? What, the Grinch is a villain. I know he ends up, not being a villain at the end, but no, that picture of him, he's the villain. Why would you put that on your house for Christmas? Why? I have no idea why, especially in that way that you did it with the lights shining all around it and circling around and with the light bar. That's what it is. I agree that this is what has happened to our Christmas lights. Sound Engraver, I had not thought of that until you just said it, but absolutely. Let's see who else is here. Gordon Goodbrother has made it over here from John's chat. Thank you very much for coming over, John or Gordon. Hail to you, Gordon Goodbrother. Let's see. Let's see. Zach Dan, as I said, is here. Michael says, what will postmodernism be called? It's called Michael, I've done a couple of videos on this. It's called Metamodernism, quite honestly. Metamodernism is where everything, well, no, let me put it this way. How is it described? Because let me dredge up from the video that I did from my memory banks here. Metamodernism is the way of tricking your mind into thinking that since basically there's an infinite number of choices and possibly an infinite number of universes, you made that choice in some other universe, and so everything is true and false at the same time. So that's metamodernism. And because postmodernism was nothing is true, there is no truth. But metamodernism is, oh, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We realize nothing's true, but just act like it was true because it could be true somewhere, but it's not really true. That's metamodernism. So yeah, that's what it's called. I don't know if they're going to stick with that name, but that's what it's called right now. All right, scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, I thought I was getting to the end of the chat, but nope. Let's see. Gordon Good Brother says just a lot of cotton or polyester. Yeah, polyester. Um, this is some of what the Memphis group was trying to do. Like they were taking laminate flooring and making tables out of it. Why? Why would you do that? I don't understand. But yeah, polyester just fits right in there. But again, that was more of a 70s thing. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Bethel says, let me pull this up here. I just like the 90s comic art. Neil Adams made the iconic Batman art. Okay, just because you said that, let me pull up some of the Neil Adams that I hear. Oh, here it is. Let's pull up some Neil Adams. There we go. Classic Neil Adams art in the background. Now let's see if I can find out where in the world I was. Here we go. Yes, Bethel, Neil Adams is the iconic Batman. Although, who's the Batman? Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head. For me, anyways, Neil Adams was a bit early for me, and oh, what the heck was his name? I can't remember. But the artist that came after Neil Adams that stayed on Batman for so long, I usually can remember his name. That was the quintessential Batman to me. Let's see, let's see. John says, "Don't ask me for help with naming." uh, yeah, John, I don't think I can. I always say I'm going to butcher people's names, so don't feel bad. John is talking about Irene. I call her Irene because people get her name wrong. It's Renee instead of Irene, and some people like John call her Renee, and so yeah, John is lamenting the fact that he mispronounced her name several times, but I don't think that you should lament that fact at all, John. I mispronounce people's names all the time. People actually think I'm smart for some reason. I don't know why. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oh, Greg is here. How you doing? Beauty is a um, mathematical protection is what I was taught in school. That's from ancient Greece. Okay. Uh, I don't know who that would be, unless it's Aristotle, but I don't think it is. But it might be. There's some could be Euclid, but an interesting way to put it. I have never run across that or ran across it in that way of talking about it. Let's see. Gordon Good Brothers says the DC or Dark Horse open art submission guidelines in part of the 90s said we won't hire you if all you can draw is capes. Yeah, yeah, I can see that. But honestly, capes is a cape, a big flowing cape is a good way to hide things, so that you don't have to draw so much. I agree, it's a good way to hide what you can't do, and artists try to do that when they start out. So let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down. Anthony is here. How you doing, Anthony? Jackets with sandals, yeah. I remember Miami Vice. Uh, yeah, jackets with sandals. Oh, well, it's Miami. Well, what do you expect? Let's see. Bethel says, let me pull this up 1 second. One of the best statements about style comes from Neil Adams. Style is what you make wrong, else it should be realistic art. I do remember Neil Adams saying that in an interview as well, Bethel. Yes, indeed. And that's what he taught. Oh, um, for the life of me, I can't remember names today for the life of me. That's what Neil Adams taught some of the artists that he was dealing with. Um, and he told them that, yeah, this is your style, is what you get wrong. Otherwise, you're going to try and get the style correct. This is one of the things about early comic artists, and Neil Adams was the product of those early comic artists who were illustrators who were trying to get the human form down in the, I don't know, I won't say perfect way, but because it is a stretched out, excuse me, elongated form of the human form, starting with Tarzan and early Tarzan comics. But yeah, um, that's exactly what Neil Adams had said to several people, and it is true today as it was back then. People just don't listen to it, because they take their mistakes and try to make it the entire thing, and that's the way to kill art, quite honestly. If you concentrate on nothing but your mistakes, you're killing art. Maybe if you're a superstar, you can do that and have people continue to read your work. Otherwise, you're going to end up like one of these artists that you have right now at Marvel and DC, where people give up because it's just awful, awful art. Scrolling down, let's see. Pedro is here. How you doing, Pedro? Uh, let's see. Zactan says symmetry, proportionality, proportional, simple in essence, complex in expression. Very, very. It's everybody in the chat today is firing on all cylinders except for me. You guys are knocking it out of the park. Exactly. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Comics says thanks for the beautiful images. Well, again, that's part and parcel of making comics fun again, is to make comics understandable again with beautiful art. That's my take on it. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Da, 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 da. John is still here. I wonder why John is still here. I wouldn't kick you out, John. I'm just wondering. You were supposed to have a second stream. Maybe he's waiting for it to start. By the way, like I said, go over to John's John Longbox's channel. He does a lot of great things now. He's doing not only comic, what does he call it? Comic showcases of great comics. He also is showcasing his entire collection at times and doing interviews with a whole bunch of very spectacularly well thought out people like, the Fourth Age. When we do our comic book team up, that's what John and I are doing now. We do one here and then one on John's channel. That's where we're going to flip back and forth, I think, from now on. And so episode 3 is on John's channel. Episode 1 and 2 was on my channel for our comic book team up, where we talked to, or tried to talk to, some individuals. Our first stream was to talk to Ethan Van Sciver, who did not show up. But I'll have to say the greatest comment I got from any of my, well, live streams was a comment saying that was the best live stream that Ethan has ever done. I laughed so hard at that. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Random is here. How you doing, Random? Bad art is eternal. Good art is ethereal. Let's see. Like I said, everybody here in the chat is firing on all cylinders. Let's see. Let's see. Jacko says, why hasn't everyone hit the like button yet? Well, it's kind of hidden out of the way, but it's right there next to the description box, which has the links for my graphic novels, just in case anybody wants to go and check out some of my work. My 3 graphic novels, 2 of them are superhero graphic novels, Thomas Valiant and the Valiant Heroes, and one is a return to form for sword and sorcery low fantasy called Crom the Destroyer. Just a shameless plug there. All right, let's see. Zach Tan says, modernism believed in reality, if not always a deeper reality. Exactly. Again, exactly, Zach Dan. That's the thing about modernism. They were not rebelling so much against the ideas of the medievals, but they were simply taking it as a purely realistic, almost materialistic way of looking at it. Although they still retained the idea of the true, the good, and the beautiful in the background. But that's not always the case with every artist that was a modernist artist. Let's see. Let's see. Rex says Rob Liefeld's Captain America pick could somewhat work if you move the head over a bit. I don't know. Here's the thing. when I was looking at art from Rob Liefeld in order to put on the thumbnail of this video, I was going through the Heroes Reborn, I think it was, stuff that Rob Liefeld did for Captain America, which is where that pic comes from. And you'll see the angular features of the characters themselves, and it really, really doesn't work. I mean, I can see some Rob Liefeld stuff as being, I don't know, descriptive and its own style in a way, but when it got into the 90s, it really fell down. I mean, look at some of the stuff he does right now. It's great compared to what he did in the 90s. The Shield, he did a Shield comic, the old Red Circle Shield, I think it was 2, 3 years ago. That was pretty good. But again, he's getting back to his roots and getting back to actual good art. Now, let me put up some of the good art from my own, excuse me, once again, good art from one of my own books. This is Crom the Destroyer art in the background. Well, we'll get through the logo first, and then we'll take a look at some of the beautiful art from Crom the Destroyer to show you exactly what I mean about the fact that I'm trying to employ classical artists. Let's see, let's see. Scrolling down, see who else is here. Yes, Gordon Goodbrother, super deformed. That's basically what some of the art books call the heavy manga style that's cartoony as cool as, let me see, like Moy. No, not Moy. What do you call it? I don't know. Chibi. That's it. Chibi. Super deformed. That's what they call it. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Is it Chibi or Chibi? I have no idea. Scrolling down, Vaz says, from what I remember, Liefeld said it was a promo for Heroes Reborn. It wasn't meant to be a cover, but Marvel, being Marvel, they selected it and, well, made history. Yeah, unfortunately, made history. I detested Heroes Reborn. Literally, that's when I gave up on comics. To say that new comics, no, I don't care. I'm just going to buy old comics, old collections, and things like that. That's what I did up until, the about 2016, quite honestly. Scrolling down, see if we can get to some more of these comments here. Comics Raider says, I was on John's stream, came over from that. I'll be on his stream later when he chats with Mandy Summers. Yes, I guess John is doing his stream with Mandy a little later. So if you want to see John talk to Mandy Summers, that will be coming up a little later over on John's Longbox. Pedro says, let's just say that anime/manga art style is so diverse that it that no that is a style for everyone in every thematic. It could be, but I would say manga and anime, I don't know. It has its own style. It's informed by very different cultural norms than what you would get in North America. So it does have a stylistic reference point that every one of them can trace itself back to. Let's put it that way. Let's see. Looking at some of that beautiful art from Jim O'Reilly in the background here. This is some of the sketches and pencils for a panel for Crom the Destroyer. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see. Question. No. Comment here. Hard to say anime has a specific style other than what's common easy for some. Mangakai, is that's how you pronounce it, I do believe, are independent and not part of a collective like the West. Yeah, those guys basically kill themselves to get their work done, and it's part of the culture in Japan as well. Just work, work, work. So yeah, the easiest style of actually doing things is the best way for them to work. And that, again, I would say it does trace itself back to some origin point, a cultural origin point, but at the same time, it's very diverse in a good way, not in the North American diverse way, to use that word. Tony says, RJ, which do you prefer, manga or Franco-Belgian comics? Quite honestly, I prefer I don't know. I prefer manga. I prefer, let me put it this way. For me, it's not 100%, but for me, it's 80% story. And yes, the art does tell its own story, but at the same time, even though you have your hyper realism in some of the, what do you call it, the French art. Again, can't remember names tonight for the life of me. It's got its own specific name, bande dessinée, that's it. um, so the stories really don't appeal to me. They just don't, because I'm a superhero guy. I think that comics should be read by everybody. I think they should be accessible to be read by everybody. Bande dessinée does not do that very well. Manga does that spectacularly well. It doesn't have to. I mean, there are plenty of manga out there that are very specifically not for kids, but at the same time, there is a lot of manga out there that tries to appeal to everybody, and I think that that's what sequential art should do. We're, I've been talking a lot about Will Eisner, and he talks about how you do correct sequential art by drawing on the memories and sensations that people have, not only from what's around them, but what is naturally built there within your mind. And so if you're going to go back to that, why not appeal to the biggest the biggest audience possible? Um, I apologize. I apologize once again. If my mic cut out, I wasn't looking at the screen and it said my mic cut out. I gotta keep my eyes trained on the screen. Apologies for that. Let's see. I was just basically saying that bande dessinée, which is Franco-Belgian comics, don't appeal. Don't try to appeal to all audiences at once, where I think manga does that spectacularly well. And since it's 80% to me about the story, then yeah, even though they have cleaner art, if you ask me about art and the styles of art, cleaner art in bande dessinée, the story is what pulls me over towards manga. Let's see, let's see. Although I won't go off about manga. That'll take too long. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. John says, uh, Mandy may cancel. I hope she can work it out. Oh, okay. That's a good thing to know, John. Let's see. Let's see. Gordon says, show. Gordon says, some manga is highly detailed. Yeah, highly detailed Drek. Yeah. I don't know if I'll touch that because um, I don't have enough experience with manga. I've read some manga and tried to read more manga just because I know they have good stuff, but I'm not someone who can speak authoritatively on the art styles. And I agree that some of it just can be that highly detailed Drek. Let's see. Zaktan says Western media doesn't believe in absolute truth, morality, or beauty, while anime has pathos and beauty oftentimes. Oftentimes is the great thing you put at the end there, Zaktan. Exactly. Oftentimes. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, we have Joseph in the chat. He says, honestly, to me, what we need to do is return to God. That's what a lot of this Comics Gate movement is about at its heart, a return to God. The woke left is, in the end, a tool of occultist elites. Oh, Joseph, I don't know if everybody, a lot of artists and a lot of people making comics wouldn't say that that's what they're trying to go for, but I think that you might have hit the nail on the head in that what they're trying to do in returning to truth and beauty is what is going to lead them in that direction. Let me take Joseph off here so you can see some more of that beautiful art in the background from Crom the Destroyer. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Da, da. Oh, here's a question. Hopefully, I don't disconnect my mic again. Um, so Picasso was part of this and wanted to push that form of thinking. He did actually. If you look at some of Picasso's early art, it was very detailed and very understandable. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm not someone who is very knowledgeable about art history, but in my estimation, I would agree with that. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Joseph also says the left goes after children because the money behind them literally worships at the altar of Moloch. They also go after children because they can be so easily turned towards their feeling based ideology. So, just to finish off with Joseph's train of thought here, he says, in the end, postmodernism is simply a secular repackaging of occult, Gnostic, and pagan ideas that appeal to atheistic normies. Well, I don't disagree with any of that statement, quite honestly. I think that's what we're fighting against to some degree here. And I fight against with talking about truth and beauty and going back to ideas of a traditional hero. So I've gone through a couple of examples from Cromwell the Destroyer. Let's go back to some Thomas Valiant, show you some Renzo Rodriguez here and his clean art, his beautiful art, while I go back to where was I? Where in the world was I? In the chat here. Let's see. I got to scroll up, see if I can find my place. Oh, here we are. All right. So Michael goes back to the Christmas lights discussion and says, I saw people with Christmas lights up in February, so I'll swing by there in 2 months to see if they keep them up for that long again next year. Oh, well. I don't keep my Christmas lights up that long, although I love Christmas. Let's see. Scrolling down. Let's see. Filter says, love him or hate him, Rob Liefeld set in motion a lot of comic creators. I would agree. The superstardom of the image creators did set in motion a high point for comics in sales, but I would say has led into the low point of comic. It was the beginning of the end when Image came out, I think, because it just destroyed so much of the system that produced great comics for various reasons. Not to say it was all bad, but for various reasons, it was the beginning of the end for what I would consider the heyday of comics for me, which is the early '80s, and they're great stories and art, and those two things have to pull together in the same direction in order to make a great comic. So, and the Image guys just dumped story down a hole and decided we'll concentrate on the art and that'll be enough. It wasn't. Let's see. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Let's see. Zach Dan, I think, is talking about the postmodern discussion we had. Holy Moses, I need to catch up on these comments. So somewhere in the multiverse, real communism has been tried. Zach Dan. That is a beautiful comment. Scrolling down. Let's see. Scrolling down. Tony says, I may not know art, but I know what I like. That is, I would say exactly, because your eye is trained towards certain things and your mind is trained towards certain things, and beauty is one of those things. So you know what you like. Jim Aparo, thank you very much, Gordon. Thank you very much. Yes, Jim Aparo. If I'm saying his name correctly, again, Jim Aparo's Batman is really the Batman that I always think of in my head when I think about Batman. Let's see. Scrolling down. Holy Moses, I am way behind on this chat, and I've already been talking for 15 minutes. Let's see. Michael says, years ago, I saw a picture at my grandparents' house of my dad and uncles wearing polyester suits in the 70s. I get pictures like that. Let's see. Scrolling down. Oh, Alex is in the chat. Alex says, you ever notice that further back you go, the worse the art is? I got some golden age omnibuses, and the art is so bad compared to what I'm used to. Yes and no. Again, it's the difference between the blossoming of sequential art, because a lot of those guys were illustrators, and illustration, first of all, you got to look at the conditions that they were working under, not to excuse it, but I agree. They were something that you would not recognize as being great artists today. Why? Because art and sequential art has developed so much, and illustration is not sequential art, because movement and the way that they use shapes and everything else is different for sequential art um, than it is for illustration. I think when I was talking to Graham Nolan, he was no, not Graham Nolan. Who was I talking to? Um, uh, One of the guys who is talking about what he called evergreen art, which is what you get in many Marvel and DC covers right now. It's a cover that can go on any comic. It doesn't matter because it doesn't really show much, if anything, of the story. So that would be illustration, you know. So let's see. 1 second here. Scrolling down, Alex also says Golden Age had terrible art, also that terrible 80s art. Well, there's terrible art to go around, I would say, in many ways. If you go back to something like Tarzan, I would say there was, and oh, Flash Gordon. Go back to something like Flash Gordon. You want to see some spectacular art. Go back to those comics. Excuse me here. 1 second. I got to clear my throat. All right. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. See, hopefully I will get through some of these comments. If you could, anybody wants me to answer a question, just put a question mark on it or tag me in it so that I know, because I'm going to have to move with a little more speed here through some of these comments. Bethel has a good comment here, though, saying beauty can be mathematically measured and expressed like with the golden ratio and the Fibonacci numbers. Yes, indeed. Aristotle talks about this entire thing about what really beauty is, and part of that is proportionality. And he goes into that, I think, within his work on the comedies. So he talks about that a little bit. Pedro says, RJ, what's your opinion on breaking the fourth wall? Honestly, it worked at some point in time. It's just been overdone so much that it does not work anymore. Let me put it that way. I'm like, let me see. I'm rewatching some old Magnums right now. Magnum PI, the original, 1980s. He breaks the fourth wall. He breaks the fourth wall all the time. He looks at the camera. He's breaking the fourth wall. It worked back then. It doesn't work anymore because it's just been done to death. So that would be my 2 cents on that. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Fabrizio says, I don't want to disagree with the great Neil Adams, but style is more like the shorthand drawing techniques you use, but those shorthand techniques have to be consistent. It's a interesting addition to the statements of Neil Adams. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Scrolling down. Da, da, da. Let's see here. I gotta move with some speed, so I apologize if I'm missing anybody's comments here. Alex says, what was that guy? It's on the tip of my tongue. Awful late in the 80s, 90s. Art was everywhere. Most of it was in Wildstorm, Top Cow, and Image. I don't know. You're thinking my thought would go to Stroman. Is it Larry Stroman? I can't remember his name. I always call him Strongman, but that's not his last name. But you might be thinking of him. Let's put up some more beautiful art in the background here. Let's see. What do I got here? Oh, here's some good covers. Just put that up in the background just because you want to talk about golden age stuff. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to start going through these comments a little faster. I apologize if I miss anybody's comments. Let's see. Scrolling down, and I've got to Taz's £5 super chat. Thank you very much, Taz. He says, hey RJ, just a quick shout out. Driving big high to all. Thank you very much, Taz, for the £5 super chat. Let's see. Elijah has a question. RJ, how long is the Kit Fox comic going to take? The Kit Fox comic is actually done. It's only the Rampaging Thor that is taking the excess time. I'm hoping that we can. The point was we were going to go to print. but it got delayed so long that it ran into December, and you basically can't print in December, and you can't ship in December. So if we can start the process sometime within January, getting everything printed, then that's the first step, obviously, to getting it shipped out. So that's what's going to happen with the Valiant Heroes, just to let everybody know. The reason why you can't print or ship in December is because they're just so busy that they'll push you to the back of the line, and it will be January, sometimes February, before you get stuff done, because you get pushed so far back in the line because you're asking for ridiculous things, like a giant mound of thousands of comic books to be printed, while they're trying to get everybody else's, flyers and everything else done. And at the same time, you're not going to get everything shipped in December. It's just not happening. It's going to get lost. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see, let's see. Um, Scrolling down here. Greg, it says, sorry, RJ, would you agree that cyberpunk art is a decay of modernism art? I never thought about cyberpunk in that way, because a lot of cyberpunk is very detailed. But I think that cyberpunk art, as all of cyberpunk, is a degradation of the human spirit itself. So it's not a degradation of the art itself, it's a degradation of the subject of the art, which then affects the art secondarily. That would be my take on cyberpunk, because it's basically saying that I think cyberpunk is an outcrop of the idea of nothing but what is it, that there is no spiritual, that there's only the material, and therefore we can swap out every last part of ourselves with mechanical parts. So again, to me, that's a degradation of the dignity of the human being, the dignity of the human soul, and then yes, does affect the way that the art looks in the background, but in a secondary way. But good point, Greg. Let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down. Um, let's see. Bethel says, RJ, you should read Thorgal. Thorgal? I'm not familiar with Thorgal, again, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Let's see. Let's see. Tony says, RJ, are you a fan of Michael Moorcock's Ehrlich? Um, I can't for the life of me bring that up in my mind. Just give me 1 second. I don't, excuse me, I got to clear my throat so many times tonight. But the, those stories blend together so much in my mind that it's not, I don't know. I can't definitively answer that question, Tony, quite honestly, because I cannot bring up in my mind the stories. They just get confused with so many others in my head. Um, Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Da, da, da. Alex has a good comment here. Manga has a lot of stories. Do you like basketball, slam dunk, superheroes, One Punch Man, slice of life, fantasy drama, firing, romance? Tons of them out there. Fr- Fryerin. I've never heard of that one. Let's say, but yeah, you are correct. Um, they do appeal to everybody. That is, say they go with the shotgun approach. Scrolling down, scrolling down. See if we have any other comments here. A lot of people cross talking in the chat, so I'm just trying to read through without having to read everybody's chat. So scrolling down, way down, to see if I can get any more comments. Dominic is here, and Dominic says Liefeld is a very kinetic storyteller due to his artistry being very dynamic. I would agree in the fact that they are trying to bring dynamism into the art itself, but I don't think he. Let me put it this way. I think that at some point you can use that as a crutch. Some point you can use that as a cheat, and then not work on your art like you should. But who am I to say? Because I'm not an artist. I'm only a storyteller. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see. We're coming up to the end of the hour, so I'm gonna try. I apologize if I missed your comment, but I'm going to try to get through as many comments as possible because I like to cut off at an hour just because I don't want to ramble on for too long. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Let's see. I'm trying to find a little bit. Yes, here. Craig is in the chat, and Craig says, yes, Jim Aparo was, for me, the definitive Batman artist and what I see in my head as well. Great to know I'm not the only one. Let's see. Dominic, I think, has a question. If you were to create a top 10 list of best sequential artists, who would you put on that list? I can't. Honestly, that is something that changes almost every day now. The more and more I learn about sequential art, the more and more I produce comics, the more and more I read and reread things like Will Eisner's sequential art. It changes all the time now. So I don't think I could do that. But I would say besides sequential artists, if just want to look at artists themselves and who I gravitate towards and who I would just love to read and pick up. Um, it's an odd collection because once you get out of the top couple, because there's people like again George Perez and John Byrne, Mike Zeck, but I would also throw in Walter Simonson, and his stuff is very angular. His stuff is very much different than all the others that I've just talked about. And I think, excuse me, that Walter Simonson has a great sense of sequential art as well, whereas the others have a great sense of the old traditional way of doing sequential art, which was some might call flat, but I would call reveling in the simplistic. So what's that? That's top four at the very least. So we'll have to stop there because if I go on about this too much, I'll be here for another hour. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. I agree, Wise Man. Wise Man says 90s comics art gets a bad rap. There are many great artists such as Sal Buscema on Spectacular Spider-Man. Agreed. Agreed. I am someone who also liked John Romita and John Romita Jr. as well. I really don't like the new stuff that John Romita Jr. is doing. For a number of years, it's been just awful art. But I like John Romita back in the 1980s. Sorry, John Romita Jr. back in the 1980s. But Sal Buscema, John Buscema would be again in my top 10, just to let you know. But yeah, there are some artists out there, and I think Wise Man that Sal Buscema does not get enough credit, just hands down. If you're going to talk about some of the artists that get ignored from the 80s and 90s, he would be near the top. Excuse me. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Oh, I thought I was getting to the end of the chat, but I am not. Let's see. Let's see. Scrolling down. Craig has a question I think is for me. What do you think of Basil Wolverton and Plop comic book in light of ugliness in art? That is an entire conversation on its own, Craig. I really have never, ever been attracted to that kind of art. Never. I just, I couldn't, I don't know what good I could say about it, quite honestly. I'm sure there is somebody who could correct me on that, but I can't. It's not something that I would ever pick up. Gordon says, I thought RJ was just saying hello to the chat. No. Let's see. Scrolling down, scrolling down. Stress level is here. How you doing, stress level? Let's see. Scrolling down. Michael has another question. Says, when RJ gets to the Gundam stuff in the chat, he's going to be so confused. I had Gundams swinging from my light fixtures when I was a kid. So, there is, let's see what I'll put up in the background here for some beautiful sequential art. Let's see. Let's see. I have Neil Adams. Already went through Neil Adams. We'll look at some. I think we have some Jack Kirby here. Let's look at some Jack Kirby here. Here we go. Oh no, as John Schema, but we might get to some Jack Kirby. Michael, you're a placeholder to make sure that I know where to go back to in the chat. Rex says, RJ, about Godzilla. A lot of fans don't care about the human characters and just want to see the monster do their stuff simply because they think the monsters are more interesting. What do you think? Again, as I said in my not really review, but take on Godzilla minus one, I think that monsters are a hyper example of what is wrong with humanity and certain individuals sometimes. And so to actually just have monsters without the human is a disservice to what monsters are supposed to be, quite honestly. So that's my take on it. Scrolling down, scrolling down. I think, let's see. Daz says, it's not really bad art, but I'm around issue 50 of Savage Sword of Conan. Something I noticed is Conan look change from an issue to another. Did Buscema draw them out of order? I don't know, but Buscema is known to try experimental things with his art to try to make it go faster. So he does that at some times. I don't know if it is at that time. Let's see, scrolling down, scrolling down. Let Michael says, let's have a 2-hour stream. No, I need some sleep. Bethel says, RJ, um, free Freirine is a German phrase. Uh, let's see. Beyond Journey's End uses German words for character names. In my opinion, currently the best running anime with the Faraway Paladin. Okay, I'm very very far behind on watching anime right now. Gordon Goodbrother says Sal Buscema's Hulk is the best Hulk. Let me put it this way, Gordon. I would say that he is one of the best Hulks, but I couldn't for the life of me think of any better off the top of my head. But there might be a better out there. But I think the blocky Sal Buscema look for Hulk, again, just like the Jim Aparo look for Batman, is what sticks in my head as a Hulk template. We'll put it that way. Scrolling down, scrolling down, scrolling down. See if I can get to the end of the chat because I've been talking for quite some time. Sound of Graver says, woo, still here. Yes, I am still here. Scrolling down. Scrolling down. Oh, look, I think I've got to the end of the chat. Michael has the last word. He says, Shin Godzilla was the first Godzilla movie that made me care about the human characters. That's because in Shin Godzilla, Godzilla was the villain. Sometimes you can argue that he wasn't. Sometimes, especially the campy ones, you can say that he's the protagonist, he's the hero. But yeah, Shin Godzilla, as far as I can tell, Godzilla is the villain. So care about the humans if you have any uh, sympathy for humanity, because quite honestly, the end phase, if you watch any of this stuff about Shin Godzilla, the end phase of Godzilla was to destroy the entire universe, actually, because he was going to continually continually evolve so that he destroyed all of humanity and then move off into space and continually evolve to take over the entire universe and then basically create an entirely different universe. So yeah, destruction of the entire universe was the end goal of Shin Godzilla. All right, all right. I think that's it for now. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I think we got 75 people in the chat at one point. So thank you very much, everyone, for showing up and listening to me ramble for an hour about sequential art and about my books and about everything that you all want to talk about in the chat. So I am going to have next week. I think John and I are going to do the comic book team up here on Wednesday night. Usually we do it at 8:30 Eastern, and in 2 weeks we will be doing the comic book team up on John's channel, and then I will probably be doing a Make Comics Great Again after that. So if you want another Make Comics Great Again, that will be in 2 weeks as far as I am scheduled. And next week, there will just be a comic book team up here on this channel. And before I leave, I just want to let everyone know that there are two links. Sorry, I always say three. I keep meaning There are 2 links in the description for my 3 graphic novels, Crom the Destroyer and The Valiant Heroes and Thomas Valiant. I want to thank everyone for showing up, and I will leave you with the first video for Crom the Destroyer since I didn't use it as an intro. All right, I'll see you all later. Bye.
An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled, our heart has returned, and the world will burn.